Hello, everyone, and welcome to Happy You Asked, the podcast where we explore a little thing called happiness, one awkward conversation at a time. And I am Erin Claire, your somewhat tired, somewhat menopausal host right now. That's how I'm feeling. So today I have with me Dr. Kristen Lee, who is a renowned behavioral science educator, best-selling author, and clinical social worker from Providence, Rhode Island, a beautiful place, who has reached millions with strength-based resources that foster connection and advance science and solidarity. As lead faculty for psychology at Northeastern University, Dr. Chris's research and teaching interests include individual and organizational well-being and resilience, particularly for marginalized and underserved populations. She works with organizations and leaders around the world on how to use the science of behavioral change and human potential to build mental health cultures that prevent burnout. She operates a clinical practice devoted to social impact and health professions. She's the author of Reset, Make the Most of Your Stress, which was winner of the Next Generation Indie Book Awards Motivational Book of 2015, and of the best-selling Meta Intelligence, A New Psychology of Thinking. I love that title, Meta Intelligence. And also of Worth the Risk, Learn to Microdose Bravery to Grow Resilience, Connect More, and Offer Yourself to the World, which was a 2022 Next Big Idea Book Club nominee and Nautilus Book Award Silver Medal winner, and of Clean Slate, How to Make Change Happen, which was named a witty, easy to follow approach to personal transformation by Kirkus Reviews. She's the host of Cracking Up, where therapy meets comedy, and is a regular contributor to Psychology Today and Thrive Global. Dr. Chris's work has been featured at Harvard Medical School, Brown University, and on NPR, Fast Track, Forbes, and CBS Radio. In 2022, she received a first place MVP award from EdTech for her work on addressing mental health challenges in higher education. And in 2023, she earned an honorary doctorate for her work in mental health. Her TEDx talk, The Risk You Must Take, which has 427,000 views, is featured on TED. And full disclosure, Kristen Lee and I worked together at Northeastern University since 2023, where I have been honored to serve as her associate dean, which is very, very humbling for me. She is brilliant and amazing. So, welcome to Happy You Asked, Dr. Kristen Lee. It's an honor to
Oh my
chat with you.
goodness, Erin, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here with you.
Oh, I love that. So, we'll get started just with the big question. What is your definition of happiness,
Well,
Kristen?
sometimes I think a good way to define something is to define what it isn't. So I feel like happiness is not a mood or a fleeting emotion, but it's a process. And so I see it as a process of discovering who we love, what we love, and making that part of our daily lives.
I love that definition. When I teach graduate students about happiness, one of the main like threads was getting their definition.
Mhm.
And I've never heard that one, and that's such a brilliant one. Like who we love and what we love, and how do you think that people don't know that? Like who
Yeah,
they love
I
and what they
think
love?
it's right. It's interesting to think about, right? Like, how we sort of maybe do the work to kind of shed the popularized sentiments around happiness. Like, it's about something really glitzy or just this like chasing this high moment of this thing that's allegedly supposed to make us feel good. And I think for any of us who've kind of been baited into that, then we may feel ourselves crashing or maybe even perhaps wildly disappointed that it didn't like live up to its luster. So I think for all of us, it's a process of clarifying the things that light us up, that give us joy, that spark awe and wonder, and then, actually making time in our mayhem kind of schedules to make sure we prioritize it. And then I think from a relationship standpoint as well, um, the communities that we're part of and the people that we connect with matter, right? And they can bring out the best in us and help us to feel a sense of connection. And so I think that it doesn't, I don't think it's just automated. I don't think it just pops up in our life. I think it's a process of discovery. And sometimes what makes us happy at one point in our life changes over time, it vacillates. So I think to that end, we have to always be on the hunt for it, and that it's not something that's just handed to us. It's actually work
Yeah.
to
So,
maintain and sustain it, right?
so as opposed to what we should love, or maybe capitalism tells us we should love, the type of
Mhm.
house or job or
Mhm.
hobbies, and then
Yeah.
distinguishing between that and what we actually love and that brings us joy
Yeah.
and isn't it is fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like one example, one of our campuses is in Boston, right? And so and I do originate from New England. And it's not to say that I love basketball, I love sports to an extent, but I'm not one of those mega fans. I love the arts, right? And so even that like could just be a simple example of sometimes like everyone around you is like hype about the sports, but you might find, oh, I actually like poetry, or I like this other thing, I like comedy. And so I think that's the piece too, is that sometimes it's important to discover like varied interest and different go-to things that we find interesting and fulfilling.
Well, I wonder there, well, how do we navigate the tension between the sort of we should, right? That we see on, say, social media or, elsewhere or with our friend group or in society, that we should find something wonderful and it should bring us happiness. And the things like maybe it's poetry or arts that are then more held in less esteem by mainstream society. How do we navigate that without feeling like we're not right for what we like? What do we do?
I think it's such a good question, Erin. I think I don't know. I think just being curious, like I love, I think you really embody that. You're a curious person, you ask a lot of questions, you want to understand people. And so I think just having like an expansive and a curious kind of view of life. Even perhaps we could think of like having a global view, like not just sort of being insular, like where you're from or who you're around, but like just being on the lookout for like the tapestry of human experiences and opportunities to learn and see like the varied things that are available to us as humans, that can just be so enriching. So I think it's just sort of like mindset perhaps, and like a mindset of curiosity and um, wanting to sort of see like the bigger tapestry. And I think that
Yeah,
then lends itself to like, oh, there's this, and then you can sort of like take part in different things and learn more about yourself.
I like that. So expand your world view to not be
Yeah.
just a certain group of people and what they like, but more widely and broadly.
Yeah.
How about you? If you could think about a moment or two when you felt truly happy, what would that be?
Well, I feel like when I first think about that question, I can't help but think of my son and daughter, and like I can't even really pinpoint like one moment, but I think I obviously love them so much, and I think children can just bring out, like they're so playful, and so I think there's so many moments of happiness that I've shared with them, um that I could go on about for a long time. But yeah, definitely they're, they come to mind immediately for me. Um, and they're grown now, so I think about now I'm in the second half of life, and you mentioned that at the beginning quickly. And I think we change a lot throughout our lifespan. And so I think for anyone who's listening, we're all at different stages, right? And so I think it's good to just be aware of how we change and what our interests are, and just to be flexible and open to discovering what one stage of life might bring, certain forms of happiness, what other forms, stages can bring as well. And I think that's really important to always be on the lookout for. And it kind of, I think, harkens back to my kind of just overall definition of happiness, which is that it's a process. Um, and that we can pay attention to, and we can do specific things in order to maintain, kind of that peace of mind and that sense of effervescence in life that can get lost, like through loss and change and challenge. And so, yeah, that was kind of a long answer for me.
No, no, that makes total sense. I was thinking as you were talking about last night, I was teaching a yoga class, and um, one of my students in the class is in her 20s and just had a baby. And so there's beautiful joy in that, right? But also challenge that is astronomical, like not sleeping and all of those things. So that moment and still has happiness, and it has challenges. Just like today, I was telling her, I was like, it's every moment gets different, because yesterday my eldest now can drive and wanted me to teach her to make some cinnamon rolls. And so I was looking through my stuff, and then I was like, oh no, we don't have yeast. And I was like, oh God, I got to go to the store, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, I'll go get it. And then just did. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, this is lovely, right? Just came back with the things I needed and like drove herself safely. And
Big
I was
one
like,
for the
this is,
team.
yeah, I was like, whoa, I made that person who can do that and isn't a jerk about it. And so, I have my challenges that are different than hers at this moment, but there's beauty and joy in that. And
Mhm.
I think especially, you hear, especially women, oh no, I'm entering my, 30s or whatever. And to be reminded, hey, the 30s are awesome. They have this part
Mhm.
and this part. 40s are awesome. They have this
Mhm.
part and this part. They also have these other parts that really
Yeah.
suck, but every stage does. And so at that, being curious and open to what is beautiful about a moment or a time or an era in your life, and not see like one as better than the other. Certainly, I would never want to be young again. I wouldn't want
Uh-huh.
to be in my 20s again for anything, right? And it doesn't matter if my body's younger, my mind is also younger. And so
Uh-huh.
that comes with challenges. So I think you're right that every stage we see, at least especially as parents, as you talked about, like flashes of moments when our kids, happiness when they're 5 years old swinging, or,
Yeah.
12 and doing something wonderful. And yeah, there's sort of truly happy moments where you see someone else thrive, especially as you help them.
Mhm.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing: when we talk about happiness, the big thing that gets stuck in people's minds is like, what about all the other emotions?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
what about the suffering, hardship, sadness? What do those play in this experience of happy?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a burning question. And like kind of what you're just saying about the trade-offs of each stage, right? And sometimes I picture like life is like a whack-a-mole game. Like, you sort of like you kind of conquer one thing and another thing pops up. And I think, that's a great metaphor for us to recognize like there's always things swirling. And I know we both share a love for art and in the arts. And I think a lot about a quote by Georgia O'Keeffe who said, I've been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, but I've never let it stop me from doing a single thing I've wanted to do. And I think that, like, to me, it speaks to the paradoxical nature of life. Like, on one hand, you could be bubbling over with joy, elated at something, just so grateful and so happy. And then all at the same time, simultaneously, you could be riddled with fear or anxiety or frustration or anger or just stress. And like it's all happening. It's one big ball of wax. And I think that's the sort of like the unfortunate nature of how sometimes people perceive that should aspect of happiness versus what is that can be difficult because then you're chasing this like idea that everything could possibly be perfect all at the same time or what you want at the same time. Um, and so I think we both like nerd out over all the research on happiness and well-being. Oshi, his work has centered on a concept called psychological richness. And
Mhm.
that just grabbed me. That spoke to me that this body of work around it's the complexity in life that allows us to grow. It's the mistakes, it's the challenges, it's the grief we experience even. that when their research was looking at people as they age later in life, and they felt that they were able to embrace those challenging times as really shaping their identity and their sense of living a life well lived and a life of meaning. And I think that, like, to me, I've always thought a lot and written a lot about risk taking, right? And about strategic risk specifically. Like, we know, like, for example, social anxiety is the fastest growing anxiety spectrum disorder, and that a lot of people, I think we could think of like a lot of young people experience social anxiety,
Yeah.
but I think the pandemic set a lot of people that already maybe had anxious tendencies to a different level of, just because you get out of the loop and out of the practice. But this research really points all of us in, I think calls us to action to say, when we do take those strategic risks and we get comfortable with the uncomfortable, that allows that growth that we really feel glad about later on. And we don't regret making ourselves, like maybe exposing ourselves to things that are a little jarring at first, because that allows us to work through it, and that work becomes gratifying. And I think that's what yields the happiness, not cowering away or, like avoiding discomfort. Um, and that could be like, I don't know, my my struggle is like confrontation dread. I'm afraid sometimes to
Mm.
confront things, or I'm a people pleaser, so I want, sometimes avoid things. But then in doing that, I talked about connection before. You can then grow that connection because you're being more true to yourself and your experience and your needs. And that allows you to advocate more readily and connect more deeply.
That's fascinating because that same type of idea of psychological richness, it reminds me like of the, in a different framework, the idea of like Buddhist suffering, where yeah, you have to, we all suffer, right? And suffering is a part of life, but the idea that we live in suffering versus we
Mhm,
suffer are two very different things. So if we don't take those risks,
mhm,
we actually like trade larger suffering, right, for ourselves than the sort of temporary discomfort. I mean, yeah, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I am a socially anxious person. It's draining for me to be around a lot of people. But if I don't do that and experience
mhm.
that uncomfort, right, I'm going to be more unhappy.
Uh-huh,
So it's
uh-huh.
like trade this sort of smaller version of suffering, right? And be able to sit with it, which is the
Yeah.
key, right? To sit with
Hmm.
the suffering and be okay and still be content, know it will end, it will pass, so that I
Hmm.
can experience something more rich. So that
That's
the idea of sitting with our suffering in whatever form and being still okay is,
hmm
I think, important. And I see it too. You're exactly right, both in the younger generation, especially where because of the pandemic and because of our technology now, it's much harder for them to be with people and know that it's okay,
Yeah.
right? That being awkward is just how it feels to be a human being,
Uh-huh.
right? That it's not them. It's
Uh-huh.
just we're all awkward, and some
Uh-huh.
of us are used to walking around with our awkwardness more than others. But I think yeah, I think it's just a practice, and I, I'm hopeful that we can steer um, the social engagement that they're good with online into also a practice in person with
Hmm.
the younger generation. I think
Hmm.
it's a little different with slightly older, but it's shades of the same issue, right?
Hmm.
How do we
Hmm.
actually be together in
Hmm.
person
Hmm.
and and not like collapse from oh my god, this is so awkward. Right? Which is like me in every single human interaction. This is awkward, and I just keep going. Right?
And you're
Every meeting, everything. It's
But
always
the
like that for me.
classic thing is you're like the most out, like, it's like hilarious. And I think this is something I've seen a lot with my students through the years is like our perceived awkwardness, like doesn't like no one can even see it, right? And so I always say to my students, life is awkward, not you. And then my other favorite thing is saying like life is deliciously awkward. Like, and that's my weirdo piece, right? But it's like I think if life isn't awkward, like then we're probably like super disconnected, right? And like so maybe that is a good marker of if you feel awkward, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that means you're doing something new. Like for me, even going to a new yoga studio up in Massachusetts or anywhere in New England. I mean, that takes the steps from like awkward, awkward. I don't know anybody awkward, awkward. Do it anyway, Erin. Right? Worst thing that happens is you don't like it and you leave. Right? You learn something you didn't like. And that's so, but there's still that moment where I have to combat the own feeling of awkwardness.
Yeah.
Like just be like, okay, this won't kill me, right? This feeling. And just
But
sort of
like
and lean into it.
but see, like that's the thing. Like when you discuss this like so openly, it's so brave. And I think it's also like for me, when I think about that, it's like that becomes, I think, the birthplace of honest connection with other people because everyone vacillates in and out of awkwardness or like confidence issues or insecurities or just all the things. So I think when we can be honest in that way, it's a beautiful thing to behold because it's like, wait, she feels that way? Like she's so svelte, like she like what it like, like that's not a vibe, that I think people would like imagine is what your inner experience is. So I think it's just so and I think like, I've always appreciated the person who's like, I'm scared or I feel imposter syndrome or like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I think it's also to me a form of humility that I think does get lost in our culture of boss up, be a badass, you know, um, live your best life. Like there's all this amplification messaging and I think that the humility and the honesty of our actual human experience is so important for us to absorb and understand. And so, yeah, I think, awkward is delicious, awkward is awful, it's all the things. Um,
I think it's also important to laugh at ourselves then too. If we
yeah.
acknowledge our own like, oh, look, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and just sort of be able to laugh at yourself, then that's such a takes pressure off of yourself to always be perfect or put
That's
on some
right.
like facade that we know what nobody knows what they're doing as a human being. None of us do. We were plopped here and we're like, okay, I guess I'll get a
Yeah.
job. I don't know. And we
Yeah.
live until we're done and we don't know when that will be. It's
Yeah.
weird. And I think if we are all acknowledge this human being stuff is very strange
Yeah.
and it doesn't it doesn't make sense a lot of times. It's confusing as all get out, and we're all just hopefully trying to do the best we can. And some people are doing better than others, right? As others is much harder for them. They're like, I'm not being a good human right now. And I mean, I've just they're not having a harder time than I am right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
acknowledging that all of us are in the same boat with a human life, right? But we don't know. Nobody knows better than the other person.
That's right. We're
Nobody
such
does.
fraught creatures. Like we're such fraught creatures, and in this experience, like you said, to allow self-depreciation to help diffuse any tendencies of perfectionism or wanting people to like us or to present a certain way. It's so like that is so freeing, right? To just be able to like look at it that way and like how sometimes we could like feel like we kind of have it together-ish and that we're like
And
kind
then
of
like the next day, nope, I don't. Yeah.
and like oh no, like here this came. And so yeah, I think it's just a lovely way to approach this life, and I think that's a way we can liberate ourselves and one another from these horrific, like I call it, okay, as academics, we're always good for a good acronym, right? So I
Mhm.
call it ASSIES. And so it's asinine self and societal imposed expectations.
Ooh, I like that.
It's
Yeah,
in my TEDx talk.
I like
I
that.
get a good rouse on that one, because it's like, take those
Mhm.
asses out. Like, don't like, why are we doing this to ourselves? Like and again, it's the TikTokification, as I like to call it. It's like, it's just a lot of pressurized messaging. And I think when we can maneuver around that, and it's critical thinking skills, right? It's like, who's telling us we need to be this way? Who made
Yeah.
this stuff up? It's wild, you know? And it's but it's also like as we can poke fun at it, it's also like so serious. It's so consequential if we
Yeah, it
believe
involves
these
money,
things.
career, like whether or not we can feed ourselves and all these different things, right?
Yeah.
There are stakes to this.
Yeah, it's a
But
saboteur of happiness. Like, when we think about what we could do to possibly find a semblance of happiness in our lives, that's the opposite of what could lead us there.
yeah, I like that thing about like imposter syndrome, things like that. I think quite a bit about when I was my previous job as a professor, I was advisor for secondary ed students. So they
Oh.
were all becoming high school English teachers, right? Delightful, and I'd lead them through their little every step of the way. There you go. Now these classes. Now this stage. Now this. And then the last one, when they meet with me, they'd be like, "I can't go teach now. I don't know anything." And I'm like, "Oh, now I get to give you the secret. None of us do. You we are making it up as we go." And the reaction was almost always the same. It would be like, first of all, horror to learn that everybody that had taught her and that she like these people were mentors for her didn't really know what they were doing, but also this like liberation of, oh, right. And I'm like, here's teaching. You get in the front and you act like the teacher, and you are, right? You're trained, so that's already happened, right? You already did that. You might not feel it, but all you have to do is just get up there and bam, you're the teacher. They'll treat you like you are. Be nice, don't be a jerk, learn more, and that's it. I mean, that's the secret. It That's both terrifying that you think everybody who is in charge, like people who have immense amounts of power, it's the same thing. They don't know.
Mhm.
None of us do. We just learn and we try to get better. We try to be ethical, but none of us really know.
Mm,
And that idea that we're imposters somehow, no, there's no such thing,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
You have the background or you don't, but just 'cause you're not going to feel like you know what you're doing. I
mhm, mhm.
mean, like I know what I'm doing as a dean. I'm still like, what the hell does that mean? I don't. I've been doing it for a while now. I'm like, is this what it is? I don't know. So I like that idea. I want to hear about some practices that you do personally that help you with happiness.
Hmm. Well, you know that I'm a word nerd, as I like to say, and
Mhm.
I love writing. I write every day. It's important to me that I start my day writing. It just feels like it feels like an awesome way to start the day, and I need that kind of grounding. And then, I thought this would be fun for this podcast, especially as I love comedy. And
Mm.
that's something I've really made a practice of and been trained in over the last few years. And in the height of the pandemic, it's when I started my comedy show, which was completely absurd because there was so much gravity and so much tragedy. And but I knew like humor is a protective factor. When we look at resilience research, it's overwhelmingly cited. We all know it. We have that friend that can make us belly laugh. We know that if we can't take a minute and step back and laugh, like we'll cry. And that was kind of the whole premise of my show. And I practice humor every day in my writing and in my life. I like to be weird or zany or just poke at things. And it's really a form of critical thinking, like calling things out in a different way. And then I love like watching and listening to comedy. I love performing it. And I think, especially because, so much of the work that I do is around creating mental health access and helping people who are really suffering, like I don't take that lightly at all. Um, that levity really matters. It can, just help me regain perspective and create an outlet even. And then I think it's good pedagogy, like so meaning that like I feel like clinical work is also teaching, and my teaching work is teaching, my leadership is teaching. It's all about co-inspiration and co-discovery.
Mhm.
And so I think when we bring humor in for teaching, when we bring fun in and playfulness, that allows us to connect and to learn and unlearn and relearn. And those experiences, I think, can just be completely transformative and elevating. So for me, it's writing, it's comedy. I mean, I got like a litany, like I have to do a lot, honestly, because I am a person with a lived experience of anxiety. I also can get really low at times and discouraged, and I'm really very sensitive in terms of the heartache in the world. Like one thing that I find really challenging is how we have so many advances in what can help humans flourish. And there's a lot of polarization at hand, both in the US and worldwide. And I think the discoveries we've made around human happiness and creating access for people to have a decent life so that they can then like, because pursuing happiness is a privilege, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that aspect creates a lot of distress for me as a person, like injustice or lack of access. As you mentioned in my bio, I do a lot of work with marginalized and underserved communities. And so, though, the state of things and the missed opportunities to help all people flourish disturbs me very profoundly. And that's why I have to be so hell-bent and relentlessly focused on ways to sustain happiness and well-being. I think any of us who are in this work of education or service to humanity who want to see humanity advance, we recognize that distress at hand. And I think sometimes we might feel guilty, like, about pursuing happiness even, or
How dare I be happy when there's so many other people being
there's so much
unhappy?
suffering, right?
Yeah,
But I
they're
think
yeah, exactly.
I think, call us to be very focused on our own happiness and well-being so that we can spread that positive contagion in the world. And I always say, just like germs and hate and fear spread, so do wisdom and loving kindness and integrity and happiness, right? And so I think I think those pieces are really important. So it's not just like, yay, let's just be toxically positive and happy and let's just
Yeah.
be like, trite epithets and, slogans. No, it's actually deep work and it is a process because it's so needed in the world so that people can maintain hope in order to bring that kind of level of change that the world needs. So it's not just for sake of self, but it's that moving from me to we that I think then regenerates that happiness. It's a wonderful virtuous circle because if we can find it ourselves, we can help spread that contagion. And I love that. And I think that's what motivates me to do all my practices. It's not just so I'm like, oh yeah, I feel good and like,
Yeah.
I feel positive today. It's like so much more than that. And I think that the
Yes, I
research really
agree.
shows us that it's the ability to give that edifies and nourishes us.
Yeah, I think sometimes people feel like, when they read and hear about injustice or different decisions that will increase suffering, that their own anger about that will help somehow. Like if they are content without their days and not feeling complete outrage at all times, that's going to help the situation. And the
Hmm.
fact is that outrage doesn't actually help the situation. Actions help the situation, right? So for me, I see it as, of course, I'm these things are horrific when we see suffering around, right? And they hurt me emotionally. But if I'm going to sit in that hurt, then I can't help. I can't
Hmm.
make it a better place. And so I
Hmm.
have to take care of myself so that I can do the work, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping through this podcast that people realize more, like your your misery, right, and dwelling in it doesn't make things better for other people.
Yeah.
And we can feel bad and recognize all the suffering and still take care of ourselves and still find ways then to contribute, which is really going to help with our own happiness. If we're doing something to make the world better in some way,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be fixing all the problems, but it's a ripple. Like you said, it's a ripple out. You have one ripple, it leads to another ripple, leads to another, and it's contagious. So if we can focus on things that help not just us, but other people in some manner, that's actually the work of making it
Mhm.
a better world. So okay, I want to hear more about your comedy. I know people will be like, "What? How would she do comedy on this subject?" So, can you talk to people about that? What's your show like?
Yeah, I think, and just like as a footnote to what you just said, I just loved it. It was so poignant. I think it's what inspires us with our students, right? And teaching psychology, our psychology program, it embodies people who we draw students, and we have such an amazing alumni cadre of former students who they did that very thing. They got curious, they were in despair perhaps over the conditions of the world, and then they want to take action around it. So I think that's something that I know we're both very proud of. My show, so it's just a lot of fun. So I convene I have like a wonderful group of comedians that perform with me. So I really kind of like moderate and host the show. And my themes are all around mental health and the really weird stuff people will say to try to talk you out of it. So like, oh, and also like one of my bits is like, you've got that one friend who's listened to like two mental health podcasts, and suddenly they're the next Deepak Chopra. And then, they're like, "Oh, have you tried intermittent fasting or have you tried making a vision board?" And you're like, "What are you talking about? I'm in a major depressive episode. Like, that's not going to help." So it's a lot of riffs on like the stuff people say to kind of try to make you happier and cheer you up that like just fall flat when you're in it.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and
Oh yeah,
then,
no, I get that. Yeah, the other day I was getting my hair done as one does, and I was complaining about my hot flashes, and she was really like telling me about essential oils, and I was looking at her like there there is no essential oil on earth who's going to get rid of this hot flash that I have. I could bathe in it, shower this, and I would smell great and be hot. That's what would
come
happen.
on, just manifest it. You can manifest
Just
getting rid of the hot
manifest
flash.
it away. Yeah, I manifest it by turning the AC, way down, the electric bill way up. That's what I'm doing. The essential oil, I'll smell that and be hot. Yes, exactly. But yes, that's the same thing. Like, God love them. They mean well, but just so not right.
Hey, different things work for different people.
That's right. You're so much more fair than I am. At the moment, I'm just like, no, no, no. I'm gonna go get some hormones. Is what I'm gonna do. Right.
Hail to science, yay.
Thank you for your suggestion that I don't like. Well, where can they find this online? Is there, or is
You
it only
can
live?
You can find, so right now the show is 100% live in organization. Right now it's kind of it travels. So we used to help, I love the Lyric Stage Company in Boston. They've
Mm-hmm.
been an incredible partner. So we've hosted multiple philanthropic shows to benefit the National Alliance on Mental Illness and a Coma Project, which focuses on BIPOC mental health access. So the live shows now can be, custom, like folks will invite, and then the show is live. So we do it to help organizations who are looking for like team building, nonprofits sometimes, so
I
it's
love that.
yeah, so it's available there. I think folks might like my TEDx talk where I use humor to really talk about deeper themes around risk taking.
Mhm.
But you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Chris Lee, and my website has all my stuff there. So, I think just in general, it's embedded in my writing style, and
Mhm.
so it's all there for the taken. And yeah, this has been so wonderful. I've had
I have a
fun with
couple.
you.
I have a couple more questions I want to ask
All
you.
right, pepper me with questions. Do
All
it.
right. One is, if you could design a society focused on happiness, what would it look like to you?
Ooh, oh my gosh, this is like, I love it. I think it would focus on everybody having a decent like quality of life, that there aren't these like gaping disparities. And then I think this psychological richness concept is really interesting, that people feel less inclined to think they have to be perfect to be worthy. I
Mm,
think one in which we know it's okay not to be okay, but we don't have to stay stuck. And one that just like is just like this tapestry of people and perspectives. And I guess that would embody pluralism, like the ability to live and let live, but to want to love and learn from each other. I think that would be so beautiful.
So I really love that concept of we don't have to be perfect, right?
Hmm.
Because as we get older and live life, we know that even if we reach those goals or whatever perfection goal we had, that's not like, and now I'm happy forever. That's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
how it works. There's
Not at
no,
all.
end of the movie, and then bam, done, happy. There is no perfection. There's just messy, messy life, and that we are worthy no matter what our imperfections, perceived or otherwise, are.
Hmm.
And that if someone's treating you like you're not, then we should get the hell away from that person.
Here, here.
Yeah. All right. This is my question because I go to a lot of concerts. That's one of my forms of staying happy is I
Yes.
love all that energy. I love seeing other people happy. And that's what a concert is to me.
Yeah.
Thousands of people who are happy. And that energy is like, golden rays for me. So it
Oh, I
nurtures me
love
for
it.
life. But I like asking people, what's one of your favorite songs?
Oh my gosh, I love Closer to Fine by the Indigo
Oh, I
Girls.
love that song.
It's and speaking of concerts, I've seen them so many times and I've seen them play with the Rhode Island Philharmonic.
Oh, that must have been
Oh,
amazing.
it
That
was
must have been
in with
phenomenal.
Joan Baez at
Uh,
Tanglewood.
oh my gosh.
It was
And
like
the bet.
it was ridiculous, but I agree. Like I love seeing people happy in these experiences around music and that song. It's a great song about happiness, right? And about being fine with the way life is, and that you're on this quest and this search to pursue happiness, and yet it can, it's just once you stop, like being so intense about it, you discover like that's the discovery. So that's a song
Yeah,
I just
that's
love.
that's a key song for mine. I really listened to that one a ton when I first started grad school. That one
Yeah.
and Galileo, and
Oh,
they were like, I love those two, and they were like my journey songs. Like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go. So I was
yeah.
even listening to Closer Fine last night before I taught. I was like, just
Aw.
to sing because it's one of those
Yeah.
I like singing really loudly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that I love that. That's one of your songs.
It's like a mainstay. And me too. I love it that you also resonate so deeply with it. And then the other one too, I love Anderson .Paak. He's from
Yeah, yeah.
Oxnard, Cali. And there's a song that's like I love it. It's my favorite. It's hard to pick one of my favorites from him, but it's called Celebrate.
Hmm.
That I if people don't know it, listen because it's all about celebrate while you still can. And it's so good. So that's
I
another
don't know that one. I'm gonna have to listen to it right after this.
have a listen. It's really good.
I love that. Do you have
Yeah.
any final thoughts on happiness?
Yeah, I think just remembering that it's a process and it's messy, lots of redos. It's all the things that's awkwardly delicious. It's all the things. So just give yourself give yourself to experience life and be a human. And it will always look different and it will be, wild and woolly, and that's like what it is.
Awkwardly delicious. That's my phrase of the day. Well, I can't thank you enough for talking
Oh,
with me. It's
this
been
was so
wonderful.
meaningful and so much fun, Erin. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And we'll
Mm.
talk again soon. And thank everybody for listening. Thank you to Dr. Kristen Lee, a phenomenal human being.
Oh.
All right.